Hi, this is Ralph Zuranski. I'm on the phone with Michel Fortin. He's one of the leading copywriters in the world today. He is so successful in his writing that he's helped a number of the internet marketers achieve $1 million days in sales. He has been at a number of the internet conferences that I've taken photos at and run the computers, and I have to say that Michael knows more about copywriting and testing copy than anybody that I've ever met. I think that's one of the reasons why he's such a great teacher and also such a great copywriter, is he tests every aspect of copywriting to find out what works and what doesn't. I know that most of the time on any of the copywriting pieces that he creates, he has like 4 or 5 tests all run simultaneously on the colors, the fonts, the placement of images. I mean, it is truly amazing. He is a scientist when it comes to developing copywriting that really works. How are you doing today, Michel?
I'm doing well, Ralph. Thank you very much for asking.
I really appreciate you taking your busy time. I know you get like 1,000 emails a day, and you're in incredible demand. I hope that's not all spam.
Oh, actually, those are real emails. I probably get 2,000 to 3,000 emails that include spam.
Well, I remember that you were one of the first people to help volunteer with the In Search of Heroes program back at the big seminar when I put the wrong name on your photo.
Yes, that's right.
So embarrassed. You contacted me and said, well, you've got somebody else's name on my photo. I think that endeared you to me immediately. I was so embarrassed.
Well, I didn't mind it so much. The other guy looked, he was a little bit better looking than me, so I didn't.
Well, let me go ahead and ask the questions because I know I'm breaking into your productive time now.
Sure.
What is your definition of heroism?
If somebody goes out there and does one tiny little thing that makes some kind of a change in the world, it doesn't have to be a huge legacy type thing. It could be one tiny little thing. You go to, for example, an orphanage, and you spend just 10 minutes with an orphan, or you go to a senior's home, or you see somebody who's trying to cross the street and has difficulty, and whether it's a person who has some kind of handicap or even a person who's fearful, and you help them cross the street. To me, that means somebody who's a hero. To me, that means somebody who has impressed in that one person, tiny little time frame of their life, that little grain of dust, something that means a lot to them. You know, there's an old proverb, an old story of a person who was walking along the beach and saw those starfishes that were beached, and takes one and throws it into the ocean, and the other person said, how can you make a difference when there's so many of these starfishes on the beach? He says, well, I made a difference with that one. And that's the point, is that you don't have to be a huge success. You don't have to do some tremendous thing in order to be a hero. You can do something that is a blink in an eternity that can mean something to someone. To me, that's a hero.
Yeah, boy, that's true. Gregory Allen Williams, a person that wrote the book about saving a man's life in the LA riots, he says there's a little bit of good in the worst of us and a little bit of bad in the best of us. And when somebody just does something good for somebody else, that they actually become a hero. Does that fit your definition?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Excuse me. The one thing I do, for example, when I go to a seminar, whether I'm a speaker or just somebody in the audience, and somebody comes up to me and asks me one simple question. Now, it could be something business-related, but it also could be something in terms of the seminar. It could be something as easy as what kind of what do you think about the speakers, whatever. Those are opinions, of course, but the thing is that person values my opinion. Mm-hmm. And whatever I say, I am going to make a difference. Maybe not that person's entire life. I may make a difference in that person's day or that person's, next hour or so. Yeah. But I made a difference. Mm-hmm. And that's what a hero is. Yeah. To make a difference, how big or small. Yeah,
that's one of the things that really impressed me about you, is that you took the time, no matter how many people came up to you at the different conferences, you always dropped what you're doing and made sure that you developed a relationship with that person. And, that's pretty rare for somebody that's attained the fame that you have in this industry.
Well, I have had. You know this, Ralph, specifically because it actually happened with you. Is there's some point where I'm about to burst.
Yeah.
I need to take some time out. But I can tell you that I truly believe in the Will Rogers dogma, where he says that he finds a little bit of something interesting in every single person he meets, and that's true. I meet people where that person may be to a degree, I guess, in my business, if you want to look at it that way, insignificant. But holy jeez, when you spend just 5 minutes talking with that person, now either you've made a difference in that person's life and that makes you feel good, or that person might have given you one tiny little tidbit of an idea, a piece of information, some feedback that will make a difference in your life. And to me, I don't want to lose those opportunities. So every single person I meet, I will try. I cannot guarantee, but I will try to spend some time with each and every person. And that's why I think that's crucial, like you just said, is that you go to a seminar, you don't want to blockade yourself, because the biggest amount of learning I have made in a seminar, it's in the hallways, in the bars, in the restaurants, outside the seminar, outside when people are chatting and smoking or whatever the case may be. Those are the opportunities for you to learn a little something that can make a dramatic difference in your business. And if somebody passes you by, and even if you just needed to take 30 seconds, you just missed that opportunity that could have made you either a lot of money or have changed your life or made you happier, at least for that day.
Boy, isn't that true? Well, I know that you had a pretty rough childhood. Did you ever create a secret hero in your mind that helped you deal with those difficulties?
Well, not necessarily. I have been, I guess, on the Internet for quite a long time, and the ages of pre-Internet, like bulletin board services and stuff like that. And there was some games that I used to play that were like Dungeons and Dragons, and I guess one of the things that I loved about playing those kinds of games was people didn't know who I really was. So people didn't have to disapprove of me, because I had this huge fear of rejection, this huge need for approval when I was growing up because of the abuse in my childhood. So the people, the friends that I've made in those bulletin board services, even though I was locked in my head, I really wasn't a sociable person. I was a quasi-agoraphobic, I guess. But those people were my heroes. Those people were the people who, every time I logged in, and I remember having a 300 baud modem in those days on a Radio Shack Color Computer 64, which is comparable to the Commodore 64, with a one-line text browser where you type in one line of text, you press enter, and it takes about 15 minutes for you to respond. Well, those people were my heroes. And then I guess later on, as I grew up and as I became a teenager, there was a gentleman who became a mentor of mine, and he was a big fan of motivational speakers, spiritual thinkers, psychologists, and people who actually have made differences in the lives of other people. So I became a fanatical student of Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn is probably the premier gentleman who has made changes in my life, as much as in my business life, which was Dan Kennedy, who's also a big believer in having a positive mental attitude, in making the best out of your day, and so on and so forth. So those were my, I guess if you want to call them secret heroes, they were my heroes. I'll give you an example. There's a quote that's hanging above my desk, and I'm looking at it right now as I speak to you, Ralph, and it's been hanging there for almost a decade, and it's from Jim Rohn, and it says, "There are some things you don't have to know how it works. The main thing is that it works. While some people are studying the roots, others are picking the fruit." Life or success or whatever you want to call it, it just depends on which end of this you want to get in on. And that, to me, changed my life around, because I was always overanalyzing. I was always trying to perfect. I was always trying to figure out ways to deal with the certain problems I had when I was growing up as a child. And that made me realize, just do what needs to be done. Do what works, and don't question it. And that changed my life around.
There's a real controversy in these days about goodness, ethics, and moral behavior. What is your perspective?
There is, I can debate about this, and we can go into big philosophical argument about what is right, what is morally, right, and all that stuff. I'm a big believer in something that is very special to me. It is that we all have we have three minds. We have the conscious mind, we have the subconscious mind, but we also have the superconscious mind, a term that was originally coined by psychologist William James. And what happens is that superconscious mind, your intuition, your conscience, is telling you every single moment of every single day what to do and what is right. And when people feel shame or guilt or something that makes them feel that they've done something wrong, it is not because it's either wrong or right. It's simply because it was not in proper alignment with their own set of values, their own intuition, their own superconscious mind. If you if you are in the process of thinking about doing something, take some time out to think about it twice rather than just going at it. Sure, sometimes you need to be expedient, but look at it from the perspective of, is this something that meets and matches my conscience? Is this something that I feel is right? And that's the point. You can say that we can talk about the arbitrary gray area of what ethics is and what it ain't. I don't think that it's a legal. It's not black and white, but everybody has a conscience. Everybody has a consciousness. So, to me, if you really want to do what is good in the world, if you want to do something that's quote unquote ethical, it's not a religious question. It's not a moral question. It is an inner question. Does it meet your conscience? Does it follow your intuition? Does it feel right rather than is it just right, or is it in textbook right, or is it according by the law right? Yeah.
There's certain principles that people are willing to sacrifice their lives for. Are there any principles that you're willing to sacrifice your life for?
I think so. The one thing that I believe in terms of principles is the biggest one is humility. And it's something that I've learned in the process of my growing up and learning the problems, going through the problems that I went through when I was a child. If you look at, for example, some of people have egos, and it's normal and it's natural, and we all have things that we are that are near and dear to every single person, and people will fight for what their egos tell them that they need to fight for. I'm a very humble person. I always like to take the low road. And I do like the approval. I do like the limelight. But if I feel that somebody else can take it for me, if I feel that if there's something that I can do that if it takes away from me but it makes somebody else's life better, I will do that. That's a really hard lesson to learn in humility.
Wow.
Whenever you look at, for example, some of the discussion boards that I'm participating in, sometimes you get these really fierce battles. And there was a couple of times where people actually were against some of the things that I've actually either said or done. And I will go into the board and I'll say, I so understand how you feel. I have to look at it from the perspective of the other person.
Yeah.
And I humble myself by saying, listen, every single person in this world is a teacher. Everybody teaches you in some way. People who are nasty to you as much as people who are good to you, they're all just teachers. They're not good, they're not bad, it's not black and white. Things that happen to you, things that people tell you, it's all teaching you something. Your consciousness is where you come to the realization that I am ready to learn. Just like the old Confucian saying that, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. To me, teachers are people or events or things that happen. And as a humble person, my guiding principle is to always look at every single thing as some kind of a lesson. And that's a principle I would sacrifice for. Yes, absolutely.
Well, everybody has low points in their life. I know you've had a fair number of those events in your life. What was the lowest point in your life, and how did you change your path to have victory over the obstacles at that time?
I recently wrote, that's actually not true. I wrote a book over 10 years ago that I just recently put to the internet for free. And it was a book that I've written as a way to teach my own self how to go through some of the hardships that I was going at that time. I was a go-getting, goal-achieving, goal-oriented, type A personality, do as much as you possibly can type person. And I realized that I was achieving a lot. I was making a lot of money. I was a salesperson working on commission, and I was doing very well until I realized that I was neglecting and ignoring other things, and especially my own self, the quality of my life. I was focusing too much on quantity of time rather than quality of life. Well, lo and behold, in what seemed like a matter of hours, I lost everything in my life. My home, my car, my furniture, my wife. I lost everything, and then I went into bankruptcy. And I even had to look at sleeping at the YMCA for shelter. And then I started writing that book, and I realized there are far more important things out there than, first of all, people are more important. And the second of all is time. Time is a commodity. It's a scarce commodity. And what you don't do in this moment is something you will never be able to do in that moment anyways. Once that moment is gone, it's gone. Yeah. Do you want to spend it working on your business? Sure, if it gives you some kind of feeling like I'm doing something that I absolutely love to do. Or do you want to work in a job dreading those years until you retire? Or are you going to work so much that you neglect the people that you love or the people who you love? So the point I'm saying is that low of the low that I have gone through was the most precious and beautiful gift that I have ever received. It was the biggest lesson that I had to learn. And that's what that pretty much encompasses everything I just said up to this point.
People, they fear to do anything because they fear they're going to fail. And when catastrophic events like that occur, some people, they never recover. Would you say that it's those events that change the course of our life for the better?
Those events are those that do change your life, but you have to. Like death. There's a grieving process to go through. When you're in the thick of things at that moment in your life, you'll probably be depressed. You'll probably have a hard time trying to see the lesson for what it is. But when you have a chance to go through the grieving process, this pseudo grieving process, I guess is a better way to call it. Take a step back and look at that's why I'm a big believer in writing in journals. In fact, the book that I just mentioned just not too long ago was a book that was actually a way to write to my own self on how to deal with the things that I was going through in my life. So it was like writing in my own journal. Because that way you can teach yourself to be better. You can teach yourself to accept things better. You can teach yourself to get out of that rut. You can teach yourself, Jim Rohn said it best, if you're in a low point in your life, go help out somebody else who's in a low point, in the same low point as you. Because by teaching others, you are, or helping others, you're actually helping your own self. Because then you can take a step back and say, well, gosh, I'm telling this person how to, get out of this situation, and I'm in this situation myself. And then you realize, because what happens is that you let this intuition flow, this consciousness flow, and you realize that you will get out of that rut by doing that. So that, to answer your question, that to me, that's what I would do, especially writing in a journal, but most often when you have an opportunity to, go through the grieving process, be depressed, those are things, if you're unhappy because something really bad happened to you, that's perfectly fine. But then, once that's done, take a step back, and then you'll learn, you'll see the lesson for what it is, and you'll grow from it. Some people, they don't step back. So what they do is they keep themselves into that depression mode. Some people have bad things happen to them in their lives, and they stay there for a very, very long time, simply because they want to stay in there. Wayne Dyer said it best. Your body has a natural ability to heal itself. If you have a cut on your arm, are you going to force it to stay open so that because you want the world to see, hey, look, I have an open wound here, I'm hurting, take care of me.
Mm-hmm.
Or even yourself, because it gives you some feeling of grandeur, the fact that you are hurting, the fact that you are, because it means something to you.
Mm-hmm.
No, your body's natural process is to heal its own self. The same way, if something bad happens to you emotionally or psychically,
mm-hmm.
as well as physiologically, your body has a natural tendency to heal itself. Let the healing do its own job. It takes time. You don't heal overnight of a cut wound, just as you won't heal overnight of a bad situation or a bad event that happened in your life.
Mm-hmm.
But once you heal, now's the chance that scar, that's what scar tissue is.
Mm-hmm.
Scar tissue is your body's process to strengthen that one area that was broken.
Mm-hmm.
Bones that are broken, when they heal, become even stronger than they were before. That's the process of even a bad event that happens in your
mm-hmm.
life. Something bad happens to you, and once you've healed, yes, you will have scars,
mm-hmm.
but you can turn your scars into stars, because those scars are like shields that will protect you in case this stuff happens again, and it'll make you stronger. And I believe in that totally.
It's funny that you talk about journaling. Lori Morgan Ferraro, who's another copywriter, I did her interview, and she had suffered sexual abuse as a young person, and she's now creating a course using journaling to help other women overcome the trauma of that situation and growing up. So it's fascinating that you would talk about journaling, that it really helped you also.
Oh, absolutely. I wrote in my journal so much, especially in those dark times in my life. And it's also a great reference tool, because it makes you more resilient the next time something happens in the future, if it happens again, or whenever you do have a chance to go back and reflect and review entries in your journal, you've realized how far you've grown. And that in itself is a strengthening process, because then you can see, wow, I really went through that, I really felt that way, oh my goodness, how far I've grown. And that in itself makes you grow even more, even in good times.
Well, what is the dream or vision that sets the course of your life?
The dream or vision that sets the course of my life. I live by one motto, and one motto alone. I don't believe in goals. I don't believe in an end result, specifically in my life. There's two types of people in this world. There's the people who always will live in the future, where they always have something that they want to look for, a vision or a dream, or whatever, like you just said. Mm-hmm. Then there are people who are in the rapture of the moment, people like artists. Mm-hmm. I think it was, I can't remember exactly who, but I believe it was Dr. Tony Alessandra, who said that you've got rowers and you've got drifters. And there's nothing bad with either one of them. People who row going towards a destination will row. Mm-hmm. People who drift will enjoy the scenery along the way as they drift in that little river going towards the ocean. Me, that's what it is. And the point is this. If you want me to say that I do have a dream or a vision, it is this: to always do what I love. Mm-hmm. Joseph Campbell said it best: follow your bliss. Mm-hmm. Do what you love, the money will follow, the business will follow, the success will follow. Even if those things don't, the fact that once you go through your life and you end up looking back on your life and you say, I've really enjoyed my life. Mm-hmm. I've really done something that I totally love. Yeah. So do what you love or love what you do. That's the ultimate vision, and it's my vision.
Mm-hmm. Well, in everybody's life, there's there's setbacks, there's misfortunes and mistakes that we make. How important is it to be an optimist and take a positive view of those things?
Well, optimism has a lot of sometimes bad connotations as much as good connotations. Really? Optimism is not motivation. And people misinterpret that, optimism with, for example, a positive mental attitude. Mm-hmm. The one thing that you need the most of, and that's beyond being an optimist, is not just being a realist, but being a student. if you have a bad situation, try to learn as much as you can, and try to learn. And that's why journaling is so important. And try to learn as much as you can in terms of looking at the positive aspect of what happened. There's a technique called the best and better technique. Look what's the best you can pull from every situation, and how you can be better next time, or how can you better your own self from the event. Is that an optimist? Not necessarily. People will take optimism and look at it as some form of motivation. Jim Rohn said it best. If somebody's going down the wrong road, they don't need motivation to speed them up. They need education to turn them around. So being an optimist is not some Pollyanna bang your head against the wall and hey, it hurts, but hey, I'm happy about it, and I'll keep bumping myself against the wall. No, I think if you want to look at optimism in the best way, is to look at it as an educational process. Learn, and journaling is part of it. Sitting down with people, talking with them, spending time with them, reading books, spending your time on learning as much as you possibly can, you will be able to go down the right road. Fast or slow, doesn't matter. And that's not optimism. That's just being, that's just following your conscience. That's just being a realist, I guess. It's not being pessimist. It's not being optimist. It's probably an optimal point of looking at it, an optimal point of a way to look at things. But it's not necessarily optimistic.
Well, do you think it takes courage to pursue new ideas?
It absolutely takes courage. I mean, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the ability to take risks when there is fear. As the old saying goes, for people who like speakers, when I speak on stage, they say, you'll never be able to get rid of those butterflies. Your job is to make those butterflies dance in formation. And courage is that. If I pray to any one God or any one spirit or any process in this world, I pray for three major things: strength, courage, and wisdom. And the strength to be able to do what is necessary, the courage to be able to go ahead and do it, the courage to be able to also accept defeat when you need to accept defeat, and the wisdom. Exactly, that's the prayer of serenity that they use, for example, in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's the most beautiful prayer in the world, because then you have the wisdom to know the difference, the wisdom to know what to do, when to do, how to do it, who to say it to, at what time, and when not to do things, when to shut up, when to stop yourself from doing things that you shouldn't be doing, stuff like that. So to me, courage, yeah, absolutely. If you have a new idea, you're always pushing the envelope in every day of your life, because you're always growing and evolving. The problem is, are you going to be pushing it by a millimeter today, or are you going to be pushing it by a yard? And that takes courage. And it also takes courage to realize that in the first place, not just courage to do it. That takes strength. But to me, courage is absolutely necessary, absolutely.
Well, do you think that in the process of pursuing new ideas and using that courage, that you're going to experience discomfort in the pursuit of your dreams?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's it's like going through life. If you're ever going to do something, you have to take the goods and the bads with it. The good will outweigh the bad, of course, but there will always be bad. There's always going to be discomfort. But here's the point, and coming back and tying it back to what I was saying earlier, if you do what you love, if you do something that you have zest and passion, and you're so fully absorbed in the process, you tend to not even think of the discomfort, even though you are actually feeling it. Your body is feeling it. If I'm doing something I love, and I'm just going to finish this because it's important. If I do something that I love, the discomfort level will be on the back burner in my mind, although it will always be there. Yanni, very famous composer who writes new age type music, he's like me in a certain way. Whenever he writes a whole CD or a new song or even a new kind of, I'm a better word for it is something like a symphony, he locks himself in his room for 2-3 weeks at a time, and he forgets to bathe, he forgets to eat, he forgets to sleep, because he is so engrossed in the moment. Discomfort, yes, But are you actually, are you focused on your discomfort? No. If you do something you love.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, here's another way, and a final way, and I'll finish it with this, is if you do what you love, then you'll have a chance to look at all the things that are uncomfortable, drudgery, perfunctory, or even painful, as things that are important to you because they're part of something that gives you purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You will turn the important into the urgent. You will turn the discomfort into comfort. It's like a natural, I guess, cyclical knee-jerk reaction. I can't really express it well enough in words, but essentially, you'll be able to turn the uncomfortable into the comfort, or you'll be able to accept or have a tolerance level higher if you were doing something you absolutely love, because that purpose drives you, and everything that happens to you that may be bad
mm-hmm.
or may make you uncomfortable is so in the back of your mind, and you just trudge along, and you will be going wherever you want to go.
How important is belief that your dreams will actually become reality?
How important is the belief that your dreams will become reality? There is, first of all, it is extremely important. But it's not important to the degree that you might think. I don't believe that people should believe that their dreams become reality, because belief is something that almost you can't change on a whim. How can you believe something that you don't believe?
Mm-hmm.
Can you force yourself to believe into something? Can you believe in your dreams? No, you can't. It's not something you can change on a whim. If I don't like asparagus today, do I have to force myself to like asparagus? No. I can't change the way I feel. If I don't believe in my dreams today, I can't switch it just like with one flick of a switch and then say I'm believing in my dreams. But here's the difference. If I have dreams and I do tiny little things that make me consciously purposeful every single day as I head towards my dreams, the more and more this internal switch will flick on for you not only to believe in your dreams, but to know that your dreams will become reality. Mm-hmm. And there's big difference between belief and knowing.
That's a profound point. Well, in the process of trying to achieve your dreams, there's a tremendous amount of doubts and fears, and a lot of people in your life will try to crush your dream because they don't want you to change for fear of having to change themselves. How did you overcome your doubts and fears?
Journaling is the one. The other point is to always constantly listen to yourself and to be true to your own self. To thine own self be true in Shakespeare Hamlet,
Yeah.
And the one thing that you have to understand is, this is absolutely so true. We are like, and I don't mean to proselytize for any religion, and I don't mean to sound religious, but we are all like Jesus, where we're crucified between two thieves, mm-hmm. tomorrow and yesterday and tomorrow, or in other words, fear and guilt. The fear of what's going to happen tomorrow and the guilt of what happened in the past. Mm-hmm. And there's always going to be that. But, like Jesus, he was true to himself. He did what he needed to do. Well, like yourself, if you have fears and you have doubts, that's perfectly fine, as long as you realize that the more focused you are on yourself, the more you let the inner you tell you what to do, guide you in what you're doing, the more you like writing to yourself as much as even talking to other people about how you feel about certain things. That is learning process that will give you the ammunition to destroy lack and limitation. There's also another thing, and I think it's the most important. The greatest creator of fear is a low self-esteem. Mm-hmm. Any lack and limitation in your life that are there, don't just, they're not just lack and limitations because they exist. They're lack and limitations because you believe they are a lack and limitation. The only way to overcome that, to destroy those fears, at least to reduce it, is to increase the belief that you have in your own self. the more you work on your own self-esteem, the more you have confidence in yourself, or the more you work on having confidence in yourself, all the other fears and all the things that are destroying or attempting to destroy the things that are good to you in your life, or the things that you want to do in your life, will almost dissipate by themselves, because you become a bigger believer in the best thing that ever happened in this world, and that's you.
Huh. Well, is there anybody that helped give you the willpower to change things in your lives for the better?
Well, like I said, whenever I grew up, I had a mentor. And I'll tell you one thing that really has the most profound impact in my life. He kept telling me every single day something very, and it may not sound profound, but he says, turn off the tape recorder. Okay? Now, let me explain what that means. I was a salesman, and as I grew up and I was trying to make sales, I had fears and doubts. But a lot of times it's because I was saying that to my own self. There was a tape recorder in my mind that kept telling me, I'm stupid, I'm a failure, I'll never amount to much, I will always, I'm going to fail, or this is not for me, or this is too lofty of an ambition for me, or this is impossible for me to reach, blah, blah, blah. My mentor kept telling me, he would just, some days he would just look at me, and I wouldn't even say a word, and he would look at me and he would say, turn the tape recorder off, Mike. And that is the most profound thing that I've ever been taught, because we all have tape recorders in our minds.
Yeah.
We do become what we think about. We, you reap what you sow. If you think you're a failure, if you think that you will fail, if you think that you're not, you're not good enough for whatever, then you are. Yeah. You are what you think. And there's big philosophy that I go by is the Latin cogito ergo sum by a philosopher by the name of René Descartes in 1637. And what it means is, in Latin, it means I think, therefore I am. If you think you're a failure, you are. If you think you're a success, you are. So that thing that my mentor kept telling me, turn the tape recorder off. It's just a very modern way to look at it, but it's so true, and that has changed my life.
Yeah, that's amazing. Everybody has upsets, offenses, and people that oppose you in their lifetimes. How important is it to forgive those that upset, offend, and oppose you?
How important is to what?
How important is it to forgive others who upset, offend, or oppose you?
Ralph, did you know that forgiveness is a very selfish thing? Did you know that actually forgiving is not because you're doing it for the other person? Forgiveness is probably the most selfish act you could ever do, and it's a good selfish act. Because when you forgive, you are releasing all the tension, all the bad stuff that you're hoarding onto that's going to cause you great problems, great turmoil. If you forgive and you let go, it's unbelievable the release that you get in your life. I used to be stubborn. I would look at a person and that person who would do me wrong, and I would be stubborn enough to say, I hate that person, I'll never talk to that person again. But who's really being hurt here? Now, I'm doing it because I'm thinking that I don't want to give the person either the pleasure of my forgiveness, or I just don't want, I want to show that person I'm really mad at that person.
Yeah.
Once you forgive, you let go. And guess whose life is going to be more enriched? Both of yous, of course, but the most important person is you.
Yeah.
So forgiveness is extremely important, because the more you forgive, the more you can let go of all the nasty stuff and start working on the good stuff in your life.
Yeah. Well, how important is service to others as a source of joy? Do you find joy in serving others?
Well, it's the same idea. Jim Rohn said, don't become wealthy at the expense of others. Become wealthy at the service of others. Every single person who has made, for example, a lot of money in this world, or even every single person who is happiest in this world, are people who are at the service of others. Whether you've built wealth because you've produced a product or provided a service that was at the service of others, and you gave value to other people's lives, or you gave your life to charity, serving others. To me, that is so important, because by doing that, it is like forgiveness in a sense, where you can get out of that this huge feeling in yourself that you've accomplished something that is true to you, not something that is going to be a goal that you reach in the future, not something that's going to be true to the other people around you who you're serving, and you're thinking that you're just doing this for other people. No, you're doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
Gosh, so, it's so important for you to understand, and I'm speaking to the people listening to this call. It's so important for you to understand that when you give of yourself, the law of karma is there. You get back, and sometimes 10 times more what you give out. And it's the same thing in the bad way. If you are bad to the world, if you don't serve others, if you withhold the goodness that you can put out in the world, it will come back and bite you in the butt. So, yeah, I believe in being at the service of others, absolutely.
How important is it to maintain a sense of humor in the face of adversity?
The greatest cure for pretty much almost all disease that has been actually scientifically proven, although there's still, it's pretty premature now, but there are more and more tests being proven that laughter, laughter is the greatest immune system kicker.
Yeah.
They found out. And I don't know where these tests are. This is anecdotal, so I can't back this up. I've read so much about it. But there are tests that have been proven in the moment of laughter that your endorphins get kicked in, the dopamine in your brain and your body gets kicked in, your hormone levels gets kicked up a notch, and those things in turn increase the immune system, and those things help to fight off disease. I'm not saying that that's true in every case. I mean, I don't want to say a person who has cancer should laugh their way until, they're healthy again. That's not my point. But maybe if they're hurting while they have cancer, laughter is a good way to take their minds off of it, as the most basic and fundamental to also even being able to help cure you, because laughter is the source of goodness in the world, but it is also the source of goodness in your own self, body-wise as much as mind-wise.
Yeah. Other than Jim Rohn, who are the other heroes in your life?
Oh my goodness! Do you have a couple of hours?
Sure.
I have a lot of mentors in my life, but I think there's quite a few of them. I'm not a religious person. I am a very spiritual person, and I read a lot on spiritual leaders because I believe they have a lot to teach us. Whether it's Jesus or the person actually I'm really referring to is the Buddha. I'm not a Buddhist, but I enjoy reading a lot about the Buddha. I've read the Dharmapada, the Bhagavad Gita, for example, and other books of other spiritual leaders. And they're mentors to me because they show, they lead by example. They're the perfect example of love and goodness in this world. And what they teach is more important than, I'm not going to say that you should believe in the virgin birth and the crucifixion and all that stuff in Jesus' life. But do you actually have to, did you take the chance to stop and just read the words that Jesus uttered, for example, on the Mount? The lives that they led. And I don't mean to say that from a religious perspective, of course. I'm just saying, just listen to what people teach you. Listen. Don't hear. Yes, I hear what you're saying. No, listen. And those are the mentors that mean a lot to me. Another few mentors, modern age mentors. I'm a big fan of Brian Tracy. I'm a big fan of Jim Rohn, of course. Tony Alessandra, and also the funny part about it is I've learned a lot of things from current spiritual leaders, and I do believe that Joseph Campbell, who is probably one of my biggest mentors in that realm, has taught me so much about the power of the inner self. And Joseph Campbell is the one who uttered those famous words, "Follow your bliss." And he's one of them. Florence Scovel Shinn is another. John Randolph Price. Those are more of the spiritual kind of guys. But I am Louise Hay. So I read a lot about that stuff. Now, you can say it's all metaphysical mumbo-jumbo. The point is not to believe in whatever it's metaphysical or not. The fact is I just listened and learned to apply whatever I learned in the way I want to my life. And that's the whole point of any religious, any philosophy, any thinking process. It is not to believe in what people tell you. It is to make use of it.
Well, do you think there are any heroes in our society that aren't getting the recognition that they deserve?
Repeat the question again, please.
Do you feel that there are any real heroes in our society today that aren't getting the recognition that they deserve?
Absolutely. But, you know, those who are the real heroes are people who don't seek recognition in the first place. They're not heroes for the sake of recognition. They're heroes because they're heroes. You know, to answer your question by a very blunt answer, yes, of course there are heroes out there today in today's world that do deserve more recognition. But you ask them that question, what do you think they'll say? I don't care. I do what I feel is right. Point. Period. You know. And that's the more important thing about that.
Well, why are heroes so important in the lives of young people?
Everything that will create, actually, let me rephrase that. Everything that's going to happen in this world, even today, is molded, created, prepared by, built on by, first of all, people. And people were once children. They were once kids. And their lives today, very, very often, are molded, as much as they are molding the world today, they're molded by the things and the people and the instances and the events and the situations and the circumstances of their childhood. I was lucky. Well, I guess I'm not lucky because I believe that everybody has that capacity. It's not luck. But I was lucky, or I guess a better way to say it is I was fortunate enough to look at my lessons in my life and look at them as the most beautiful gifts in the world. And to have mentors and heroes in my life that have helped me. But there are so many kids out there that fail to go through this quote-unquote fortunate process that I went through. So if they have an opportunity to have heroes in their lives, boy, oh boy, can you imagine the goodness that we can unleash in this world? Because they will be molded and their future will be molded so that they will be the molders of the future. So today, the people that make differences in people's lives today is because they had differences made to them in their own lives when they were, especially when they were young. Because it is when you're young that your entire life is almost dictated. Now, good or bad, you can have bad stuff happen to you, and makes that, dictates your life in a good way. You know, there's an old story about the two sons of an alcoholic father who grew up, and one became an alcoholic, and the other one became a very successful businessman. And when an interviewer asked him the question, "Why are you who you are today?" and they both answered the same answer: "Well, I didn't have any choice. Look at my father." One blamed his father for being the way he is. The other one looked at his father and used that as a springboard for not being like he is. And so, and fortunately, they might have had heroes in their lives that made them go that way. Especially the one that's positive, I mean. But the thing is, whether it's not or it's true, the thing is, we all need heroes. But the kids need them the most because they are the molders of the future. How
does it feel to be recognized as an internet hero?
I would be very misleading if I said it didn't feel good, because it does feel good. I think that's the ego part of me. But what I feel best about, I have testimonials that I put on my website about the lives that I changed, and that makes me feel good. But what I put on my website, what I put out in the world as a way to prop my own self up, is just the tip of the iceberg of what I get every single day. We were talking at the beginning of this call about all these emails I get every day. A good percentage of those emails are just tiny little words from somebody who I made a difference to in their lives. And it doesn't have to be this huge thing that I can actually use as a testimonial. You know, it doesn't have to be an actual business or success or whatever. I had people who emailed me after the big seminar and said, you know, Michael Fortin, you're a person that I've been following for so many years, and it was such a huge honor and pleasure to have met you, blah, blah, blah. That brightened up my day. And to me, I don't need to have recognition in the other way where I actually have to put out stuff in the world to get recognized. That one tiny little email made the difference in my day, just as much as what we were talking at the beginning, Ralph, about spending just 5 minutes with somebody at a seminar somewhere. How much of a difference you made in that person's day. And that's the kind of recognition. I enjoy that more than the actual pats on the back that I get in a public way. I prefer the small, private little ones because they put a smile on my face.
How are you personally making the world a better place?
By being me. That's probably the best answer I can give you. I follow what I believe in. I am true to myself, and most important, I do what I love to do. When you do what you love to do, you know, we were talking about giving good service or being at the service of others or whatever. If you love doing what you do, how much better are you going to serve the people around you? How much more passion and zest you have for not only what you do, but that what you know for what you do that expresses itself on service to others. If you had a choice to buy a product from two different service providers or two different stores or whatever, and one person hates their job and the other one absolutely loves their job, how much more that second person will be willing to help you? How much more at the service of you will that person be? Of course, a lot more. So how do I expect to make a change in the world? Just by being me. Just by being Michael Fortin. Just by being the person who loves to do what he does. Because that will give all these byproducts of everything we just talked about on this call.
You know, there's a lot of problems facing societies all over the world today, like racism, child and spousal abuse, and violence among young people. Do you have any good solutions for those problems? Education.
If you know, we cannot change the world by forcing it, but we can change the world by educating it. I was once a college teacher. There's such a great sense of fulfillment that one gets when they teach other people. If you know, look at laws and rules and all that wonderful stuff. They do exist for a purpose, and I understand that. But I also believe in education, because the more you educate people, the more you will change the world rather than forcing it to change. So if you're going to help out somebody in their own lives, if you're going to help out people to realize maybe if they are bad people and they've done hurt to others, education, it's not proselytizing, it's not trying to argue with them, it's just teaching them. And teaching them until they're ready to be taught and they're ready to change. I've met a lot of people who changed their lives because they've learned and they decided to learn, and that's the key. So yeah, I mean, education. That's probably the most profoundest answer I can give to that question is just education.
Well, what do you think about the In Search of Heroes program and its impact on youth, parents, and business people?
Well, that's the point. This is exactly what it is. What do you think it's doing? It's educating. This is exactly why I love this program, and I was one of the first people to actually be fully aware of it and fully aware of my potential contribution to this program, because I do believe that this program is not just the point of going out there and being heroes. It is going out there to teach other people the power of being a hero, and it educates them and then makes changes in their lives, who will then hence change the lives of the people around them, who will then just grow exponentially. And This is Ralph. You've seen the movie Pay It Forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to be a hero, or you don't necessarily have to get somebody to become a hero. All you have to do is to educate others on how powerful it is to become one, and if they do become one, then they do it to others, and then they do it to others, and then they do it to others. It's one huge multi-level marketing process.
What are the things parents can do that will help their children realize they also can be heroes and make a positive impact on the lives of others?
Well, if I had to boil it down, I think I've said two core actions or two core activities on this call. They are teach and listen. And how parents can make changes in the lives of their kids, the first thing, of course, is to listen.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the strife that we have in today's world, I believe, and I'm a firm believer, that is because we are all so busy with the goings-on in our lives that we don't stop and listen as much as to our own selves, as much as to the people around us, and more importantly, to the kids in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
If you just take a chance to sit down and just listen, and the second part, which is to teach, to educate, teachers are probably the most underrated people in our society, the most underrated profession in our society. I'm a big believer in teachers. I mean, I used to be one, and I'm a teacher right now, being a copywriting coach, as much as a motivational speaker or whatever you want to call it. But it's all teaching. That's all it really is. It's not motivation. It's not all that stuff. It's teaching. So, that would be those two fundamental activities. Listen and teach.
Mm-hmm. If you had 3 wishes for your life in the world that would instantly come true, what would they be?
If I had 3 wishes for anything I want in the world, what would they be?
Mm-hmm.
The first wish is that I wouldn't have any wish. Because I believe in just being. I'm not, I know this might not necessarily sound, it might sound a little woo-woo to some people, I guess. But I don't want any wishes because I just want to enjoy my life now. I don't want to wake up at 67 years old and look back on my life and say, is this it?
Mm-hmm.
And then those are the times when you wish.
Yeah.
Because then you realize what you've done wrong. No need to wish. Just do.
Mm-hmm.
Don't wish for something now. Just be, and then you enjoy the process, and then when you are 60 or 70, you won't need to have any wishes because you're going to go look back and say, I'm happy. I'm satisfied. I'm fulfilled. I did what I needed to do, and I did what I love to do.
Mm-hmm.
The second, I guess, wish would be that more people follow those 2 things I mentioned earlier, to listen and to teach. Mm-hmm. And the only way that I can do that is not necessarily to wish for it, but to actually do it myself. Mm-hmm. The more you actually listen and teach yourself, the more you actually teaching other people to listen and to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the third one, this is a little hard for me because I don't wish for much. But I guess I wish that if people listening to this call has, found some grain of something that helps them, whether it's at that very moment they listen to, that day that they are in, or their lives. It doesn't matter. To me, that would be the one wish I have.
Mm-hmm. Oh, those are wonderful wishes, and I just really appreciate your time in answering these questions and just sharing your wisdom with the world, and I just can't tell you how much I appreciate you.
Same here, Ralph, same here, and I think that we are both kindred spirit. The thing is, when we meet at seminars sometimes and we discuss about some of the things that are going on in our lives, like you and your parents and all that stuff, the fact that it's not that I just stand there and take time to listen to you, but you also do that to me. Mm-hmm. You are the perfect embodiment of everything I spoke about. So the whole point is, I appreciate you as much, and I appreciate you doing this program, Ralph, because this is a great program, and I wish you the best.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I thank you for that, and I also tell you that your ability to offer to help in the early part of the program really helped inspire me and to keep on going, because it's been 13 years of trying to get it together. And
I understand, absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to thank you again.
You're most welcome.
Michel, you have a great day.
You too.